People often mention that those familiar with your history can derail your prospects ahead. In the case of Meghan Markle, that individual happens to be Trevor Engelson, the film industry figure she wedded well prior to any thoughts of royal residences like Windsor Castle entering her mind. Their union concluded, yet Trevor departed not merely with emotional wounds. He left carrying anecdotes. Anecdotes about a side of Meghan that hardly anyone witnessed. And among those tales, based on murmurs from those near Trevor, one revolves around a particular evening in 2016. An evening in Toronto that might have halted Meghan's aspirations for royalty right at the start. An evening so thoroughly concealed that it produced no news articles, no official investigations, no mark in any open documentation. Up until this point. For beneath the refined persona of the duchess resides the individual Trevor once recognized, the coordinator, the provider, the person capable of sustaining the gathering far beyond when others had departed. And this marks the starting point of our narrative. Toronto in the year 2016. Meghan Markle stood on the edge of transforming into a regal romance legend. Prince Harry had recently arrived by air to visit her, evading the scrutiny of the royal household for what was intended as a discreet, understated rendezvous. From an external view, it appeared as a budding affection kept under wraps. However, as per those with inside knowledge, the events of that evening were far from pure. Informants assert that Meghan wasn't simply enjoying Harry's company. She was reportedly setting up what the local nightlife scene in Toronto referred to as a session. In straightforward language, this involved coordinating more than a simple meal or a sip of alcohol. It entailed excess. It entailed illicit materials. It entailed venturing into a realm that Harry ought to have steered clear of entirely. And then emerged the identity that stunned all who learned of it. Princess Eugenie, who is Harry's relative on his father's side. Her identity was supposedly linked to the arrangements for that evening. Nobody is certain whether she knew about it or played any role in the occurrences, but merely having her name brought up caused astonishment. Since a single misstep, a single news story, and the account wouldn't have merely shattered the budding relationship between Harry and Meghan, it could have brought disgrace upon the whole monarchy. Rumors indicate that an issue arose during that evening. A narrow escape, a near revelation so perilous that had it become public, the tale of Meghan and Harry could have concluded prior to its inception. Yet it didn't conclude. For what reason? Because the account was suppressed. No records from law enforcement, no sensational gossip columns, no front-page features in the next day's publications, simply quietude. And in tales of this nature, such quietude resonates more profoundly than any uproar. Those with inside information stated that influences were exerted swiftly, forcefully, and from the uppermost echelons. The royal establishment had far too much at stake. Harry's public persona was already vulnerable. Meghan was cultivating her reputation, and Princess Eugenie's involvement was perilously near the controversy. Concealment emerged as the sole viable choice. What might have turned into a widespread controversy, with flashing cameras, arrest photos, and humiliating headlines, was in its place wiped out in a single night. The sort of elimination that doesn't occur randomly. The sort that demands clout, financial resources, and authority operating discreetly behind the scenes. And right in the midst of everything was Meghan Markle. Serene, collected, and as informants describe, remarkably adept at maintaining the vibrancy of the evening while ensuring its confidentiality. To grasp how Meghan navigated such an evening with such ease, one must comprehend the environment she inhabited. Toronto served not only as the location for shooting her show suits. It was the place where she crafted an alternate persona, shielded from public view and her relatives elsewhere. That environment centered on Soho House. Not the refined gatherings associated with aristocracy, but the exclusive haven where influential and advantaged individuals gathered to revel. Glasses of wine and chuckles represented merely the facade. In private spaces, informants reveal the actual offerings were far more intense. Cocaine provided covertly, organized without inquiries. And Meghan, as per those who socialized alongside her, wasn't merely an observer. She served as the link, the individual others relied upon when the evening required additional energy. She didn't simply recognize who desired what. She understood the methods to acquire it, the quantities, and the ways to ensure its unobtrusive delivery. Her significance within that group wasn't based on attractiveness or allure. It stemmed from connections. Individuals recalled her not solely as the energizer of the event, but as the facilitator who enabled the event to occur. a lady who could instill a sense of invincibility in others, even as boundaries were overstepped. And once that becomes clear, you begin to comprehend why the murmurs regarding the Toronto occurrence have never fully faded. Because this wasn't an arbitrary mistake. This represented a peek into the Meghan who existed beyond the motivational posts on social media and the addresses on benevolent causes. The Meghan that Trevor Engelson understood intimately. Prior to Toronto, prior to Harry, there existed Trevor Engelson, Meghan's initial spouse, the entertainment producer who believed he was uniting with an adventurous performer. Their ceremony in Jamaica during 2011 ought to have been a carefree, sunny retreat. In reality, it offered the initial genuine insight into the Meghan that Trevor would eventually comprehend more thoroughly than anybody. Attendees from that occasion continue to discuss it. Not the pledges, not the shoreline, not the romantic narrative. What lingers in their minds is Meghan taking a seat and preparing more than 100 marijuana cigarettes for the visitors. 100. It wasn't a brief amusement or a whimsical gesture from the bride. It constituted a systematic endeavor to guarantee the ambience was appropriate and each person at the celebration possessed what was necessary. Back then, folks dismissed it with humor. They labeled it whimsical, suggested it demonstrated Meghan's laid-back and enjoyable nature. But nowadays, viewed in conjunction with the evenings in Toronto's social scene, it appears altered. Less akin to an amusing tale and more resembling a recurring behavior. Meghan wasn't merely joining in these instances. She was the curator of them, the distributor, the guide, molding the evening's atmosphere. And Trevor, he observed everything. He didn't simply wed Meghan. He entered into matrimony with the aspect of her that precisely knew how to sustain a celebration's vitality and precisely how to ensure it remained memorable for all. This wasn't a solitary characteristic. Meghan perfected an ability that few managed to achieve. She maintained multiple existences simultaneously. To her acquaintances in the film industry, she appeared as the ambitious artist dashing between tryouts, discussing aspirations on a worldwide scale. To her kin at home, she presented as the refined offspring who upheld exteriors. To Prince Harry, she embodied the empathetic companion, the trusted advisor who provided him refuge from the royal scrutiny. But within Toronto, amidst the Soho House associates, Meghan represented an entirely distinct figure. She was outspoken, assured, and as per sources, unwavering when substances like powder appeared on surfaces. She was the individual who encouraged everyone to believe the evening could extend indefinitely because she possessed the means to supply whatever was required. The ingenuity of it all lay not only in her actions, but in her ability to maintain these spheres distinct. Meghan could reveal just sufficient about herself to allow each faction to believe they truly knew her, without permitting the facets to intersect. That wasn't coincidental. That was endurance and expertise, and it's what rendered the evening in Toronto during 2016 so credible. Because Meghan had consistently been the person who could enter any setting and transform into precisely what the situation required. When Meghan encountered Prince Harry, she didn't have to feign purity. Harry already possessed a notoriety. The images from Las Vegas, the extended evenings, the rumors of extravagant excesses. He was acquainted with controversy. He didn't require someone to subdue him. He required someone who could match his pace, perhaps even direct it. And that is precisely what Meghan provided. As per informants familiar with the group, she offered Harry an element he couldn't discover within the confines of the monarchy. Liberty. Liberty to revel without repercussions. Liberty to delve into obscurity without concerns over potential betrayals. Meghan understood how to render indulgence secure. She knew how to conceal the disorder. For Harry, who matured beneath the relentless attention of sensational media and overseers, that type of alliance was captivating. Meghan wasn't merely his romantic interest. She evolved into the sole individual who could perceive his shadowed aspects and remain composed. The sole individual who didn't merely tolerate it, but oversaw it, regulated it, and rendered it seem impervious. This explains why their bond appeared so abrupt, so fervent, because underlying the romantic tale was an element considerably more calculated. Meghan presenting Harry with the single aspect he desired above all, privacy. And that elevated her beyond a mere companion. It rendered her indispensable. Every iconic figure leaves remnants. And Meghan's remnants weren't confined to murmured accounts. They appeared etched upon her visage. Earlier images displayed gentler, more rounded contours, a nasal structure that echoed her mother's, broad and recognizable. But as Meghan ascended further into prominence, her looks evolved. More defined edges, a slimmer ridge, reshaped openings. The formal rationale was straightforward. Aesthetic enhancements. Refinement for the entertainment world. Nothing out of the ordinary for a performer gearing up to radiate on screen. But informants from her time in Toronto alleged something more sinister. Excessive use of cocaine, they noted, can erode the supportive tissue, causing the nose to deteriorate internally. Operations cease to be about conceit. They turn into necessities. As per these murmurs, Meghan's interventions weren't adjustments for attractiveness. They were restorations, disguises, a method to obliterate the proof of a way of life she couldn't risk being linked to her. Each subsequent procedure wasn't merely a transformation. It was an interment of the prior incarnation. And if you arrange the pictures over the years, you don't merely observe a lady pursuing flawlessness. You witness someone revising her appearance to inter the history. But Meghan's method of elimination didn't halt at her reflection. It extended throughout her whole existence. Informants indicate that companions from Toronto who once reveled with her vanished from her network abruptly. University associates who had formed recollections with her were subtly substituted. Even familial bonds were severed abruptly, resulting in voids where relationships formerly existed. This wasn't transformation in a light-hearted manner. This was tactic, a pattern of construct, obliterate, reconstruct, obliterate. Whenever she entered a fresh domain, she ensured no pathway remained for anyone to retrace. By the period when the rumors concerning her background started to emerge, Meghan could dismiss them and declare, "That doesn't represent me." And in a certain sense, she was accurate, because that incarnation of Meghan had ceased to be. Trevor Engelson experienced it directly. He had been eliminated, not solely as a former spouse, but as an observer to the Meghan who orchestrated environments and delivered experiences that others merely hinted at. Through severing the former connections, Meghan guaranteed that nobody could reassemble the pieces of her history. But fissures don't remain concealed indefinitely. Gradually, Meghan's meticulously crafted narrative started to reveal inconsistencies. In a particular discussion, she maintained that she had never searched for Harry online prior to their encounter. However, in a different one, she outlined his preferred qualities with a level of specificity that seemed rehearsed. She asserted she felt secluded in the United Kingdom, confined and disconnected. Yet, documentation reveals she was journeying often, to places like Italy, Amsterdam, New York. Then arose the enigma surrounding the arrival of Archie. Meghan declined to disclose the complete documentation, igniting conjectures about the importance of the concealment. Speculations even circulated that her personal year of birth might differ from the one she stated, a fact so commonplace in the film industry, yet remarkable within the monarchy. And even the royal household appeared to separate itself from her account. Initially, Meghan's official royal profile depicted her as an academic achiever, with dual concentrations at Northwestern, proficient in various tongues, honored for efforts in aiding humanity. Then, without fanfare, all of that was removed. The monarchy's online presence eliminated the accolades. What remained was a single statement: Meghan Markle, performer from Suits. For an organization as precise as the palace, that wasn't a mistake. It was intentional, a discreet revision of the legend they had previously assisted in forming. So, who truly is Meghan Markle? Is she the entertainer from Hollywood who envisioned greater achievements? The noblewoman who entered Windsor Castle under global observation? Or is she the tactician portrayed by those with knowledge, the distributor, the eliminator, the expert in transformation who constructed her destiny one facade after another? The indications imply she was never an individual carried along by destiny. She was an individual who engaged in extended planning. Someone who understood how to segment aspects, how to dominate the storyline, and how to conceal awkward realities beneath successive incarnations of herself, progressively, feature by feature, association by association. And that's the reason Meghan's narrative continues to captivate audiences. Because for each refined address on philanthropy, there's a hint of prior events. For each image under the glare, there's a dimness just beyond the view. Trevor Engelson's recollection of Meghan preparing 100 marijuana cigarettes in Jamaica, the hints of that evening in Toronto during 2016, the meticulously removed individuals from her history. They all direct toward the identical, disturbing reality. Meghan Markle constructed her iconic status not through happenstance, but through deliberate intent. The most chilling aspect is that this revelation merely touches the exterior. The genuine inquiry isn't about what she has already concealed. It's about what remains undiscovered, poised to surface. Because Meghan Markle continues to be what she has perpetually represented, a lady concealed by a veneer, grinning amid the attention, while the authentic narrative persists incomplete within the obscurity.